system as well, where the faculty could move about the various buildings and from different points, and they could do this undetected and get around a bit easier. In the year 1972, the famous reporter Geraldo Rivera did a series of investigations at Willowbrook and showed the world the deplorable conditions that the children and adults living there had to endure. Willowbrook was basically a place where people who had mental disabilities were just left. There was sadly no sense of care at this facility at all. It was understaffed and extremely overcrowded, and residents were living in the filth. Everyone living there was mistreated, and there was lots of abuse happening there. You can watch Geraldo's, basically his expose online as well, and it is horrifying to think that these children and adults had to live like this. It is awful, awful, awful. I believe there was even some medical testing done on the people that were living there, and of course it wasn't anything they were able to give consent for, so it was terrible. Even though Willowbrook was finally exposed to the public, the school did not shut down until 1987, over 10 years after Geraldo's expose on the school, which is just insane to me. It should have been shut down from when it first opened, but thankfully some laws were put into place after the Willowbrook school kind of came to light, and so now there are definitely a lot more laws about facilities that house children and adults with those intellectual disabilities. Now, some of the land that Willowbrook was located on was acquired by New York, and a college campus was she went to a store nearby to get a bar of soap. In 1983, another girl named Taisi Jackson disappeared after her mom told her to go purchase some food. And in 1984, a man named Hank Gaboreo, while he was 21 years old and would be considered a man, he had a disability and his brain only functioned at the level of, I believe, a 14 or a 15-year-old child. So a lot of people kind of place him in this child category because of that. He went missing as well. Most of the kids that had gone missing up until this point had some form of mental disability, which is awful, because sometimes that makes these kids a little bit easier to prey on. Sadly, in 1987, a 12-year-old girl named Jennifer Schweiger also went missing. Jennifer had Down syndrome, and she was extremely friendly with everyone. Most people who do have Down syndrome are very, very trusting of basically any adult out there, or any person for that matter. And she was last seen walking down the street holding hands with an unknown man. Witnesses were questioned, and this man was eventually found, and his name was Andre Rand. Andre was a homeless man who lived in several makeshift campsites on the former Willowbrook grounds. Was Andre, in fact, Cropsey? Was he the man the urban legend was based off of? Andre had grown up in New York, and according to his family, he had a great and wonderful childhood up until he was about 14 years old. Andre had at least one sister. I'm not sure if he had any more. But when Andre was 14, his dad suddenly died, and after his dad's death, his mother ended up becoming institutionalized at Pilgrim Psychiatric Center, which was located in Brentwood, New York. Now, I'm not sure where Andre ended up living after his father died and his mom was institutionalized. I wasn't able to find that out, but he apparently did go visit his mother very, very frequently. After Andre grew up, he got a job for himself and none other than Willowbrook. He was an orderly, and then he eventually became a physical therapist there. Now, I'm not sure how long Andre worked at Willowbrook for, but apparently he was affected by the terrible conditions there himself, even though he was on staff. I'm not sure if the staff lived there or not, but a part of me kind of assumes that they did. And I have heard that other people who worked there as well were very affected by these conditions. You know, if that's all you know and you see day in and day out, that would definitely affect you for sure. So after Willowbrook shut down, apparently Andre became homeless, and he started living on the property in some makeshift tents and lean-tos that he would set up with supplies this case due to the fact he had taken those 11 children away on the bus prior. However, there was no evidence tying him to Alice, and he was let go. The other girl, Daisy, who had gone missing, was also never found as well. Andre was also questioned in this case, but no charges were ever brought forward for him. Hank, the missing 21-year-old, was apparently last seen with Andre. The police did question Andre, however, since Hank was 21 years old and a legal adult, the police did not search as hard for him and believed he might have just been a runaway. Hank has sadly never been found either. The fifth missing child on Staten Island, Jennifer Schweiger, however, the eyewitnesses claimed they saw Jennifer walking hand in hand with Andre. After searching and searching all across Staten Island, Jennifer's remains were found 1 month after she disappeared. A firefighter participating in a search noticed a shallow grave, which was located near the abandoned buildings of Willowbrook. Sadly, this grave was not too far away from a known makeshift campsite that did belong to Andre. The police were summoned there, and they sadly found the remains of Jennifer's body buried in this grave. In the year 1988, Andre was charged with kidnapping and murder of the first degree for Jennifer. While there was no physical evidence at the time connecting Andre to the murder of Jennifer, he was still sent to the trial. There was the circumstantial evidence and the witness statements as well. While on trial, Andre was convicted just of kidnapping Jennifer, but not for murder in the first degree, since there was nothing directly tying him to her remains. At this point, Andre was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Years later, in the year 2004, Andre was once again faced with a trial. This time, he was accused of kidnapping Holly, the girl who had gone to the store to get a bar of soap. Holly's friend, whom she had been with at the store, claimed that Andre had stopped in his car and Holly had gotten in and driven off with him, and that was the last time she was ever seen. Even though Holly's body was never found, a jury convicted Andre of the kidnapping, and he was sentenced to another 25 years in prison. Andre will be eligible for parole in the year 2037, when he will be 93 years old. So did Andre commit all of these kidnappings and possibly murder all of these children? Some people believe he truly did it. Others believed that Andre's mental state meant he could not have done this on his own at all. So whether he's actually done this or not remains unknown. You can even look after Andre was arrested. There are photos of him and he just looks so disheveled. There's even drool coming out of his mouth. boils down to the big question: